things have progressed a bit, it's fair to say. So I've been coming out doing bits and pieces evening and afternoon and things like that, which is why it's sort of got to this stage and there isn't much footage of it. In fact, there's not really any. But really, it's rinse and repeat all the way around. So you've pretty much seen it already. So last time we were at the point pretty much where that radius stick is currently pointing. And so we have carried on putting the posts in all the way around and meeting up with the piece through the lovely boat. Now, when we started putting the posts in, we were just doing rough heights because we knew we were going to level it with the rails on the sides. However, what we soon realised is levelling this is quite difficult. Down the fence, it's a straight line, it's quite easy to keep your level. As soon as you come out and going around radius and things like that, it's quite difficult to do. So we tried various techniques to try and do it. The easiest one actually is just level 90 degrees to the fence, because in theory if this whole thing's on a 1 in 50 plane, then 90 degrees to the fence it should match. However, that worked for this half. When we got down to this half, things didn't look correct. And that was mainly because the height of this bit coming through the buddleia was wrong. Somewhere along the line, down the back here, I'd got the measurements wrong, or the height wrong, or something, so there was actually a big dip just at this point here, which you couldn't see with your eyes, but as soon as you put the level on it, in a few different places, you could see there was a dip. Because that dip lined up with this, when I brought this line round and levelled across this section here, which is the last bit to be done, we were quite a long way out, which didn't make sense. And we're actually pretty much correct there, wasn't correct here. So that meant all this section had to be re-levelled, but that isn't too big a job, because you can just unscrew it, boost it up a little bit, put a new screw in, or put the screw back in, and you can re-level it. So yeah, that's sorted that section, and now we're looking correct round. Now because we're on wood twists and moves and everything else, there's a bit of this variation going on, but the way that it's built, it should smooth it all out for the line. Time will tell when we get the track on and see, but let's get that far and see what happens. So some of it I have put some stain on now just to protect it a little bit, and I think it just looks a bit nicer, looks more complete. But today I am continuing putting the lats on the top, and I am doing around this circle. So you see I've cut a load of the ones we already had in half, which is what's all laid out around here, and now I am putting them around this section. And what I'm actually doing is using the lat on the narrow edge on the inside, that's my spacer, and then using the radius rod here to get the line of it so that they go round on the radius. So when I get to the middle, obviously those few between these 2 points will be straight, and then it'll follow the radius again. And yeah, line up with that. I've got a mark on my radius thing here for the inside of the lat, so you line it up there, line it up there, and then 2 screws, and you move on and basically progress all the way around. Once I get down onto that section there, that'll be a little bit more freestyle, we shall call it, because there's a little bit of a wiggle in here and then across this section here as well, so that'll just be done by eye. The section that is in here, I was hoping to have this removable. Longer term, it's probably going to be a bridge or lifting, swinging, I don't know, something I'll come up with an idea for that one. But I was hoping to have this section removable, which it sort of is, in that the way I've got it fixed in, I was hoping to drop it in, but because of the twists and everything, I've had to put a couple of screws in to straighten it out. So it does mean you've just got to take a couple of screws out, and this section will lift out, but it's on its own posts in the middle that obviously don't go anywhere, and then they're sat on supporting blocks and things, so take those 2 out and it just lifts up and out. When I come to put the track on, I'll probably have to fish plate it just to keep it in line, because all the wood will move, so you'll have to take the fish plates out, take the screws out and lift this out if you want to be in. But it doesn't take a lot to step over it at this point, so that's easy enough maintenance wise. The other thing you might not spot is that this section of garden is new. So
I don't know whether I can show it.
Here to here. And that's because it's moved from up there, because up here there's now an entrance in, so that you don't have to walk over the line down here. So we've just shifted all this back. Eventually all this will be garden is the plan, but that requires somebody to garden it all and plants, and is more work. So at the minute it's just remaining slate because that's easier, but it will be green eventually. So anyway, I will carry on latting as far as I can this afternoon, and then I'll show you when it's done, because you don't need to see me screw lats on repeatedly around a circle. So I'll get on. Bye. It's a few days later and it's done. Well, there's no track on it, but the actual structure is done. So it's been a few days. I did get all the lats on the last bit of footage you saw. However, we had a little bit of a problem in this area here. So using my stick, I placed all the posts in with a mark on the stick. However, I didn't have this post in place. I thought, oh, I can go from there to there. That's not a very long section. But over here, it's not in line with this because we're not quite on that radius, but it's in from the edge a little bit more than that. So when you straight line between them, it meant all these ones in here wanted to be over here somewhere, and the rails underneath were over here. So we sort of fudged it at the time, with which Nikki will put up some pictures now showing what I sort of did in putting some longer sections on. And I had it like that for a couple of days, and every time I looked at it I thought, nah, that's a bodge, I'm not happy with that. The sort of thought was to put a siding in, but it wasn't long enough for that, and it would have meant putting more on, and it just didn't quite work. So I thought, no, I need to correct this. So I came back out, took the rail off between these two posts here, and put a new post in the middle, and then cut the rails. And actually the rails, I haven't had to redo them, they are just about long enough to go between, which meant then I could half my lats that are on top again, and now the radius follows round a lot nicer. So it gets to about here, goes straight, there's another little kink there, and then goes straight again. So that's looking a lot better, because it just looked a nasty bit, did that. Wasn't happy. So now we have it all done to this stage. So I've stained it as well, as you can see, which does make it look a lot nicer. It's now it's stained. It is quite dark, but I don't mind it. It's just some stain that I have. So anyway, all the way down there, staining it down that section was a pain, because obviously if you remember when I was building it, access and everything, plants in the way, so trying to put the stain on everything down there was a nightmare. But anyway, it's done now. Probably has to be done again in a few years, but hey ho. So next thing to do is basically lay the track on. Obviously for that we'll start at the end down there where I got to a bit ago, and then work our way around. Obviously I've left the radius sticks and points and everything in here, because that will give me the bit to follow around here for the track, which should make it easier. So yeah, so that's that bit. I have stained, obviously we've talked before about the bits that are heading off up there, because this section here will have a point on it, which will head up there in the future, but for now I've just done it like this, and I'll take these off and redo them when I head around that corner, probably next year or whenever. For now we're just a loop, so hence why I've done it like that. But the other thing I've done this morning was a little tidy up job around the back. So we'll go have a look at that and I'll explain why I've done it now. So, we're running the other day and this area was the scene of a little bit of an incident. I was running the on the coal-fired happily around the line, and we'd gone through the bridge and we clearly hadn't just put it back in the right place. Yvonne came through, no problem. Trucks behind, came along here, derailed here, got to this point here, and it was the long wagon that I have all my coal in, and of course what did it do? Tips it off, put all the coal into the gravel. So this morning I have picked it all out of the gravel. There's probably some down there, in fact I can still see a piece right there. But I've done enough, because obviously it's quite expensive these days, or hard to get hold of is coal. So anyway, picked all that up. But what that told me was, it is now time that I really do need to sort something out about the alignment of the bridge. Which is what I've done this morning as well. So, if I lift this bridge up, and the camera wants to come and have a look, we have a plate on here. It's not particularly pretty, but it works. And this basically has a V-section on it to line the bridge up. The holes under here are quite big, which means I have got an adjustment for positioning of it to get it in line, basically. And then on the bridge itself, up here, we've got this little tab, but it's actually the T-section that I used on top on here, and that basically sticks down so that when the bridge closes it aligns into that and now can't go backwards and forwards because it's gone in that slot. So that means if the bridge comes down slightly out of order, it will always centre back in and the lines should always line up. I've been saying I was going to do this for ages and I just wasn't sure how best to do it, but hopefully that will work. I've run the test guards one over it and that seems happy. So fingers crossed that will be no more derailments on there. To be fair, we've not had that many, but of course it would just be the one full of all the loose coal that then tipped itself onto the side and all into the gravel, and then I had to pick it all back out of it. Anyway, it's done now. I still need to sort out the counterweight, and that is a problem, and in fact it's falling apart, but I will do it at some point. That ends done though. That's one thing done. But next, track laying over in this corner, because that's what I said. Easy. Fixed. So before you all start commenting that ain't straight, that is on purpose. And I'm not just saying that to get away from the fact that I haven't laid it straight. Because it is on purpose, I promise you. Especially that bit down there. Because this backtrack is the downhill line. So if you're coming down here, you've got to stop before you get to that point in case there's somebody coming up. So I've put a wiggle at that end to try and slow you down a little bit. At least that's the theory. If you're barreling down here, there's not much going to stop you, but that's your own fault. But I thought if I put a little wiggle there, that might just slow you up a little bit more before you reach the point. The uphill one on this side, well yeah, that one could have been straight, but I just kind of like to just lay them wherever, to be honest. No real railway line's straight, let's face it. They all wiggle about a bit, so does mine. You'll also see that I've used single screws for the majority of this, and that goes against everything I've said about putting everything down with 2 screws. Well, there is a reason for that as well. That is because I'm a cheapskate and I only want to use 1 screw. No, that's not the reason. It is because when you're putting it onto pieces of wood like this, a flat surface, 2 screws is not going to help you. You might be able to level it, but if you're leveling on this piece of wood here on this track, this one's also going to be out. So you're much better off leveling it on the piece of wood, or in this case, the rails. And there's not going to be that much variation down this section on each one, so I don't see it being a problem. That might come back to bite me, we shall see. But that's the reason why I've done single screws. As we get round to this 4-foot radius, round into the buddleia cutting, as we will call it, I have gone to 2 screws. That was mainly a logistics thing because I put my track radius system spacer curve things in the middle, and so you can't actually get to screw your track sleepers down. So I did 2 round. I also think it's probably better to do 2 round a tight curve like this, just because it's going to want to shift a lot more than obviously a piece of straight. When I get up onto the bigger radius round there, or slightly bigger, I'll probably just get away with 1, but we shall see. I might go to 2. Anyway, that's all this bit done, which I'm glad about because it's quite difficult to work down here, as I've mentioned before. So next I'm out into the open, other than through the buddleia. It could be a bit fun as well. But right now we need to go and pick up a little bit of something for the railway that may or may not feature later on. Possibly a winter project. We shall see. Anyway, we need to go do that, so I'll get out of the bushes and get up off my knees and this sort of muddy patch here and go and collect something. Bye bye. Oh, God, it's difficult down here. Out here again at the front, and I've done a little bit of track work this morning. So last time you saw we'd got to just under here, and I've managed to lay this one down the back and around the corner, which I'll come on to in a second. And I've also done the tricky one, because I wanted to get them out of the way, through the buddleia bush, which is a little bit wiggly, but what I've tried to do with this one is, because I want this section to be removable, is I've brought it to this point so I can do my joint on here and go from there. So as I come round, I'll show you that a little bit more, but that's why I've stopped at that position there, because I want to come this way up to it. So one down the back, and just to go over, point here is so that this one heads off into the future section that's going to be up there, where all the builder's yard and mess is. This one obviously comes around here, and then we have another point here, which is going to make a triangle in here. So the radius of this, it'll be a lot tighter to get round, but that's fine because you come up there, or only smaller stuff's going to be up this
No,
end
you come
anyway.
up this side.
Yes, but you can change the point and come up that way
I
to
see,
get into
yeah.
there if you don't want to go through this tight bit. That's the alternative. What I did have to do with this point, because we're on obviously a radius here, I did make a bit of a straight, but when I came to put the point on, it wasn't quite enough. So what I actually managed to do, which was a few people on Facebook discussing it, was just bend the picot point a little bit. So we shall see over time. I don't know if the camera wants to come and have a look,
I'll try and
and
show.
hopefully you can see
You can see it's not
that
straight.
that one should be straight. This one's obviously the one that's already a radius because it's a right hand point, but there is a little bit of a bend on it. So this inner point rail here, it's probably got a better name than that, but I can't think of it right now, might just want a little bend on it to get it to fully sit across there, but as we're not going that way anyway for now, it can just stay in that position and I'll sort it later. But that's just got me then better for coming off there, and obviously when I put my stick on here and come back, that gets me following around there. So I leave the stick a little bit here, but that was just to get a better angle approaching, and then I've worked it the way back. And I know that won't be then too tight here because this is a bigger radius than 4 foot, so that'll all work out nicely there. So one thing I have realised working on this was I made a mistake when I put the post in, because I did the posts, and I'm going to tell you this so that you can do it in the future and not make the same mistake I have, in that the posts I did off this radius, which made sense to me because that's where the track's going to be. But what that ended up with is, when you have 2 posts there and there, your rails that go between are straight. They don't follow the radius. So they're actually on the inside. So what I should have done is had the posts slightly further out, so that at this point and this point it's on the radius, which means you're more centred on it. I don't know whether that's making sense or not. But what you'll notice as you go round here, especially like when you get onto this section here, is there's a lot more stuck over at that side than there is at this side, because I've put these onto the radius, and you see it evidenced a lot here in that that's almost flush and it's stuck over a long way there. And that's because, if I can bring my radius stick onto this one, if I'd have had that post slightly further out, then it would have been slightly flusher there, but it wouldn't have been as bad here. You'd have got them more central. So that's when I came to put all these on, I realised my posts were all just a little bit too far in. If I shifted them out, it would have got the rails in a better position. Anyway, it still worked, but something to think about if you're doing this is don't put the posts on the radius. You want a bigger radius for them, and then the rails effectively in the middle of those will be a smaller radius, and then it'd average out to be the radius you want. I think that's how you work it out. That might just be a garbled mess of maths and geometry, but hopefully it's useful to some people. So anyway, I'm going to carry on getting this track around here and join it up, and then I'll show you where I've got to.
What you doing?
Damn, you've caught me. So I was just going to check the track for the first time. Well, actually it's not the first time, because I have actually run it around once already. Oops, sorry. But that did allow me to fix a couple of issues. Namely, this point not quite being right for going through. Although I did go over it, but I wasn't quite happy with it. So I've re-levelled that one, because when I fit it, it was sort of done for this line, and obviously now we're running down the back as well. So I've now redone it a little bit, and it's a lot happier. The only other issue around the front, in fact there was two. I'd missed a fish plate connecting up, that was a dead simple one, and one of the lats, for whatever reason, was a little bit down. So that's got a metal washer under it now. Bumped it up, and it's now a lot happier. So if you just forget the fact that I've already run around it, we'll just say that this is the first time we're running around it. It'll all go perfectly smoothly, and you will all praise me as being the perfect track layer. When in truth I just cheat. But you may notice we have a new logo here.
Everybody say hello to Tom. He's a little roundhouse bulldog.
So the other day I mentioned that we were going to pick up something for the railway. Well, this was it. Showed up on Facebook Marketplace as a non-running diesel loco.
Well, they didn't know if it was
They didn't
running.
know because there was no radio with it.
Yeah.
But we thought, well, we'll go for it, we'll take a punt, because
was-
we can redo it if we all electronics and anything.
It was priced accordingly to not knowing whether it worked, so it's worth the risk.
But got it back, fit a radio, charged it because it was completely flat, and yeah, it works. Which I suppose we probably should have known, being a round house, of course it was going to work. We'll see how long the battery lasts. So far it's doing pretty well. We know it's got a bit of age to it, so we'll see, but that's easy enough replaced. What we didn't know is that it can you can do this. Oh yeah, it's got sound. So let's give it that test, shall we? So now you know it runs round fine. Let me show you what I've done on this semi-lift out section here that's sort of screwed in, but I'm trying to make it as easy as possible to undo. So, this end and this end, I'll show you this end because it's easier if I can spot where the join is. Here. So, if the camera wants to come and have a look at this, this lat is fixed to the removable section, this one's fit to the section that's fixed. So what I've done is I've put a number of screws in on here for this track, but then there's some pins put in, and I've made these pins basically by using the brass screws that I use, screwing them in, and then just angle grinding the top off. So at the minute they're a little bit sharp because I need to take this section out and foul them. But the reason I've done that is so that when you lift this out, which I haven't taken the screws out yet, I'll try and demonstrate this, these will actually lift up over those pins so that this comes out. So there's no fish plates on here. So I've done the same at the other end, so in theory you can take those screws out and just lift this straight up and off. I have slotted the top of them just so that if I want to in the future take them back out, I can. So yeah, that's why they're like that. They need a little bit of filing, but I thought that was the simplest way of doing this section, and obviously it runs over it well. So that's it for the minute and today, because it's getting chilly out here. I'm starting to get hungry, so that's afternoon done. But we've done the front loop. Wahey! Where should we go next though? See ya.